Yeah. Anyone have anything top of mind to say? Anything about their recent trips? How was your trip, Rachel?
It was really good. It was lovely to connect with my Chinese side of my family of origin. So I actually went and left my own family here in Rome. So I traveled over with my mother, and my brother joined us in Dallas because we had a stopover, and then we went and just connected with my Chinese side of the family that lives in Vancouver. So that's my grandmother, my aunt, my uncle, my cousins. It was really nice, very nice.
Nice.
There is some really interesting gossip going on in the entrepreneurship community. I don't know if you guys follow Y Combinator. They do their online startup school. They made a humongous mistake. They sent out the wrong emails to people. So people that got accepted got a rejection email. People that got rejected got an acceptance email. It was pure madness. And the guy that runs it, Jeff Ralston, I met him in March at their startup investor school in Mountain View when I went to YC. And they made the right decision. They're a great company, great people. What they did was they invited everybody in, and they differentiated from nothing. So they went from instead of having 2,000 companies, they have 15,000 companies. So both Tommaso and I are going through that madness right now. But it's really cool. There's a lot of learnings from it that we can apply towards our much smaller cohort. But yeah, the next probably 9 or 10 weeks that it continues, definitely making a lot of notes of how we can make use of it ourselves. But pretty interesting stuff. You know, if you're since we're all those entrepreneurial nerds, there's some really cool stuff going on there.
Oh, great. What are they doing to clean that up?
They're actually relying on the people that they really accepted to step up as moderators to basically look after groups of about 15 or 20. So I'm looking after a group. I had 16 companies and founders in my cohort. We're down to 12. People are just dropping off by the wayside. The people that were, I guess, tangentially interested, they weren't really fully committed. So there's going to be some big cullings over the next couple of weeks. That number is likely to reduce dramatically, but been pretty chaotic the first week, but kind of good chaos, I guess.
Wow. That's tough. Okay.
Wow.
I'm sure that would breed a lot of turmoil and a lot of upset, especially on the people who are going to be told that they were not actually selected.
Yeah, nutty.
Nutty. You know, on a related note, I actually met someone who is an older gentleman I met through a mentor at MIT. This particular very smart coder guy has done very well in his career. He's probably maybe 60 or so, but he had the experience of having struggled very hard to get accepted at MIT, and then and this is years back, he was in his he was just fresh out of high school. He's in college and he's at MIT. And, like a lot of people, they wonder if they really belong at a, prestigious institution. And it turns out that someone said they made a mistake in accepting him. And they pulled his invitation after being at the school for about 2 weeks as he's struggling to meet with advisors to set up his classes. Yeah, so it was very disappointing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so it took him a while to bounce back from that.
I reckon.
Yeah.
That's quite a sad story.
It is a sad story.
Well, an unhappy ending.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but he worked very hard to. He tried to get back in there and make a case, but it was a different time. Maybe this was 70s or so. And he said the institution was very different, and so they wouldn't let him back in. And he went to other schools, did very well, and charged himself with making the best he could with his life going forward. So he's rather inspirational when I do talk to him.
Awesome.
Yeah. But having said that, maybe we can launch in, and Dan, is it Dan? Dan's going to come in, hopefully, when he bounces in. And add his thoughts. I thought, first of all, to say thank you to Rachel and Chris for having made such tremendous progress on this manifesto. These kinds of things cannot be easy to put together. I'm very appreciative of you two and anyone else who launches in while we're all busy doing our separate lives and businesses and trying to get things going. So I really appreciate what you've done. And for me to come in and throw in the 2 cents and some of the others, I felt that maybe it came in a little late, and I appreciate also your acceptance of some of those ideas. And I guess that's why we're all here today, is to take a look at what everyone has said, Harriet and Lucy and others, to see how we might adjust this. So thank you for that work. And let's see what we can do to put our heads together that maybe is a good middle ground. That might be a different approach to talking to the boot camp team. I'd like to say that from my experience, and it may be a little different from yours going forward after the boot camp, I have gone in to stop in to see the boot camp group every so often, because I do go to Cambridge maybe once a month on some meetup or a program directly sponsored by MIT. So it gives me the opportunity to stop in and I see the group. And despite the connection that I think I have with, say, someone like Andrew or Erdine or Thomas, they're very busy. And so I come in and, hey, I'm surprising them, for the most part. Yeah, I'm just coming through. And I tend to stop by at the end of the day, mindful of the fact that they're still working. And quite often they're really slammed. And I share this experience because I do see them, and I think that from my perspective, while they welcome my visit and they say, oh, hey, we'll be free in 30 minutes or in 15, or hey, what if you loop back? Here, let me give you some water. Here's the kitchen. And we'll be freed up, and we have a meeting in 30 minutes. But if you want to hang out, we'll be free at 6. And since my time's a little flexible, I have a 3-hour drive that I try to put off till late in the evening. I do hang out. So, so my experience has been that they're very welcoming as I drop in on them. They try to be helpful, and I think ultimately they are. And and my observation is that they're busy. And so, again, I share this because maybe you guys who don't visit them in person often enough might not see that or might imagine it, but that's what I see on the ground. And so that kind of gave me something to think about when I saw the manifesto. And I wanted to see how can we reach this middle ground, because my view is, and it's a guess, that these guys are a small team, and they're trying to do the best they can. I feel in their presence, there's heart there, and there's decisions they're making. Sometimes maybe it doesn't serve all of our purposes going forward. There are things that I'm missing, not having been at the boot camp, which would be my next point, is that maybe there are a lot of things that the alumni, which Rachel, through a lot of effort, has made happen, and we're here talking today because of Rachel's efforts, and we're starting to claw back some of the things that I think we are missing. And so the point I'd like to make is that maybe that excitement, at least for me, when I went to the boot camp, I found my people, and this is exciting, and I was a little down when I left, and since that time, the few connections that I've made before Rachel's efforts was, who can I, talk to and sort of get a taste of that boot camp experience. And it's kind of hard when you're not there. We're all spread around the world, and it's a different thing to stay in touch on Facebook and feel some of the things that we did feel while we were there, the connection, the excitement, the energy, of being in the same room with all these exciting people. And so hopefully what we're doing with the alumni can bring some of that back, not only virtually as we meet like this in person, or rather over a conference call, but some of the plans we're talking about setting up a reunion. That'd be fantastic, so we can physically be together. And so while I get a taste of some of that by visiting, I would wonder if some of us are missing some of that strong connection to the boot camp experience because we're all over the world and we can't physically go there. So that's the other point I wanted to make. And so without actually talking to the boot camp, lastly, directly and say, hey, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? I could only imagine that as their efforts multiply into more boot camps, and most recently, having done 2 boot camps almost a week or 2 apart. They just landed back from, I think, a Brazil boot camp, was it? And then they went and did the healthcare boot camp. And so that's a lot. And so those are my observations, and I have some ideas on going forward, some suggestions on how to maybe frame some of our wording. But I wondered if anyone else has any philosophical positions that we should consider while we go down the list and really look at the wording and see how we might bring the 2 groups together.
My thoughts on that one, Richard, is I see it as like a continuum. On the one end, you've got insurgents. On the other end, you've got incumbents. And I think I really love what Rachel put together with the manifesto. It was very revolutionary, and I like that because I like burning things to the ground when it's appropriate to do so. But like once you sort of get to the stage of you shift from being a revolutionary to being like the incumbent, there's a big change in there. And I think that's kind of the point that you're making, is that we need to shift from, being the radical students to being the elected politicians or the elected representatives, so to speak. The only, and I think that's the only narrative that I would want to throw in there, is that shift from revolutionary to incumbent. Probably the other thing I'd want to throw in, and it's probably more directed at Tommaso, is, it has me thinking that, Richard, with you on the governance board, I'm almost sort of thinking with your ability to pop into town, we can probably also rely on other folks like reps from Class 5, like Ben, who's on the line, who's also in the area, that, it's like having like special representatives from the governance board, because we've got that conference call with Vimla and Andrew and everyone else tomorrow. And the Zoom environment's awesome, but nothing really is as good as that meeting in person on occasion. So I almost sort of think that, like, if you've got any future meetings or future plans to catch up with folks, it's probably worth you having a chat with Tommaso and saying, hey, would you mind passing on this message on behalf of the governance board? So we've got like another, that's not so much back channel, but like another form of direct communication with them, because, tomorrow, I think probably one of the key things we want to get across to them is that we're on the same team. We're not trying to burn the boot camps to the ground. We just want some action and some change and something that's going to be better for everybody, if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Anyone else? Tommaso?
Yeah, guys. Yeah. I think that the idea behind our group. I think that I totally agree with Chris. So basically, we are just. This is the natural consequence of the boot camp. And also, the natural consequence of the fact that, the boot camp, they don't have too much time. So, they simply left some space empty. And, I personally believe that, in the reality, wherever, there is no, nature is not, that doesn't make stuff to be empty. So, every time you give space, somebody get in. This is the natural stuff of the life. So it could be emotions. It could be in a team. So the moment you give somebody space to be arrogant, somebody else take it. So this is just how do you position yourself within the reality. So those people, they were too busy to run their business. So and they've created some space, and we simply fill in. So I see this really as this is a very natural process in my perspective. And we are just, the one who are trying to fill this gap by linking all the different net points. I have this biological perspective.
So this has been just a question. I mean, does the Vimala and Andrew and the people that lead the MIT boot camps themselves give consent to us doing this? I mean, are we at contention with doing this? I mean, if we build up a large enough voice about some of the expectations of being alumni of the network, of the boot camps, will they really give us influence on what MIT boot camps does? I mean, so it makes me wonder, A, are we organized well enough? And B, are we organized and are trying to do something with the core business, right? It is a business. They are doing these programs to generate awareness for the school as well as for entrepreneurship. And if they don't want to do an alumni network, even though they sort of advertise a little bit that there is this such thing as an alumni following the boot camps, I mean, do we have ownership? Can we lead this, run it, and not a year down the line they say, you know what, we never started that, so that's not us? I mean, I don't know where that sits. Have we had those kinds of conversations with the leadership?
I'd like to give you the short answer, and then I would love Rachel to really expand on this, because she's been at this at the beginning, even in a previous effort that you tried, and I think she can really expand on it. But I think the short answer is a bridge on things that Chris has said and Tommaso initially about there's a space, as Tommaso has suggested, and nature abhors a vacuum, so we have to sort of fill that space with some action. And at first, looking at Chris's observations, I like to say, yes, there's an insurgent sort of attitude and effort, like, let's make this thing happen, let's hit the beach. And then when we have to now, dial it back a little bit and see how we can be more diplomatic. And from my point of view, my opinion would be that all this happened because we didn't. The short answer is no, we didn't ask for permission, but the space is there. We have the need, the desire is there. As I mentioned earlier in my own comments about how, I'm missing some aspects of that boot camp experience. Maybe others who don't visit the way I do are missing more things and need more. I certainly could use more. Yeah. So we're trying to make something happen, and as some of the statements will illustrate on the current manifesto, is that we have the ability to self-organize, and that's what we're doing. But Rachel, if you could really expand on why you initially started what you've had done as a community organizer to put us together in your first effort, and now with this, with Mighty Networks.
Yes, thank you, Richard. So I must say that my history of trying to keep the community engaged and nurtured has had ambivalent feedback from the part of the boot camp team. So I've received yeses and nos ever since I began trying to prototype and experiment things for the community. So the first attempt was with Sally Coldrick, just after we did Teacher Boot Camp, so that was August 2016. And at that time, there may have been a misunderstanding, but in person, we seemed to have gotten full endorsement from both Erdine and Andrew to just go ahead and experiment, which is what we did. But then when we tried to get true substantial backup from them, they sort of pulled back. So there was either misunderstanding or perhaps they changed their minds. And we were never really clear on that because we didn't ever have a true conversation about that. When we tried to ask for answers, they sort of just became elusive and disappeared in the background. So, but Andrew has said several times over the months and years, even after that, just don't ask for permission, go ahead and try things. And my feeling is that they're not willing to endorse something that they're not sure about. So I think, going forward, my impression was that we needed to prove ourselves. So as I was saying earlier, that the first attempt with Sally completely failed, and it might have been because we used a name that had nothing to do with boot camps. and perhaps we didn't harness the right energies, we didn't create the right communication, and it was just the two of us, and maybe it was becoming too much about the two of us. So going forward, we scrapped everything, and then I started again with other people, and I just kept my heart kept coming back to this, to look for ways to keep the community together. So at this point in time, I'd say our answer to your question, Ben, probably comes tomorrow, because we have this official meeting with the bootcamp team, and we're going to look at the situation together. In my heart of hearts, I sort of feel that maybe the slight anger that is expressed in the manifesto, which is also the result of my exasperation over so many months of trying and getting sort of unclear answers, that might have also prompted a reaction from them. Because if we're too sort of nice, then we tend, sometimes I've seen that being nice just gets a non-reaction. So maybe this has poked them a little bit. But on my part, I'm really happy to turn any sort of negative connotations that are inside the manifesto into positive, constructive, ramps for building. And so I'm really, really happy that some people who are maybe less, some people who maybe have had less deceptions than I have approached it with a fresher attitude and saying, hey, can we say this in a more positive way? And I think that's brilliant, because pointing fingers never gets anyone anywhere. It just creates obstacles. So I think rewording everything so that it is positive and constructive and appealing to everyone is the way to go forward. So I really look forward to rewriting the manifesto and keeping all the intentions, but wording them so that people are feeling engaged and positive and wanting to build together. And I'm hoping, so yes, the idea of rewording the manifesto came from an input from Daniel, whom I thank profoundly for having connected with Andrew. And in that circumstance, we learned through Daniel that Andrew was a little bit iffed by, a bit peeved by some of the ways we were saying things in the manifesto. And so I'm glad that this...
If you leave it to us, we'll figure it out, right?
And I also think, this manifesto has been put out there for ages and nobody looked at it. And it's funny how, so long afterwards, suddenly it's like, oh, why is it written like this?
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy to turn all this sort of, any traces of bitterness into positive enthusiasm. And I think that's the way to go. And one thing that I want to be very clear, that we've created this on Google Docs and it's open. So it's a living document and nothing is set in stone. So there are traces of anger or traces of negativity. I think it's wonderful to sort of turn that into technology.
I mean, I'm just like you, Richard. I go to the MIT office whenever I can, whenever I'm in Cambridge, just like you, Chris. And I'll go steal stickers or whatever and just hang out and bother them. And, just kind of like that's part of the way that I stay connected. I've always said, and I didn't know it when I went into the whole boot camp, that there was sort of an alumni afterward. It wasn't until my fourth interview with Christian that he mentioned it. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And I think that is one of the bigger pieces of that pie that we ate from, that we're missing out on. Just like you said, Richard, like this whole alumni, the fact that we're in the same room right now, virtual room, should be more within the network. And I think not having the ability to just go stop in and steal stickers is missed. So I agree. I think that tomorrow is less about this is what we're doing and we're getting your permission here. And it should be more along the lines of this is what we've done. And our next step is this. If you guys don't want to organize this, then you need to get out of our way. And if it's so big of an issue that you need to be in our way, then you need to be extremely clear on exactly why you're in the way. Because otherwise we need to self-organize. I think I can't agree with you more. We're missing out on this one piece of the boot camp effort. And that's the post-camp organization is missing.
I'd like to suggest that, yes, I like very good points. We need to do something if they're not delivering on some of the things that we'd like to see happen. But I'd like to take the attitude that their intentions are good and well placed. If you see the net effect of the actual boot camps that they put together, it's a huge effort, and I got a lot out of it, and I hear lots of positives from everyone who's gone. And so the approach that I'd like to suggest we take is to say, hey, we'd like to work together. These are the things that we would like to see happen. What are your plans? Kind of not assume that they're not interested, not assume that their interests are not aligned with ours. I'd like to take the approach that maybe they're interested in the same things, and we should inquire by asking questions. Have you thought about this? We'd like that. We'd like to do this, and we go down our list of concerns.
Yep.
And see, what are your plans for these things? And the overall sort of overarching the umbrella to all this to me is that you guys are doing a lot with the boot camps, and we are a growing alumni. And with each cohort that you guys put together, there's more alumni that is now, mushrooming. And so this group is just getting bigger. We would like to help you. We'd like to help you take care of the alumni and do things right now that maybe you don't have the resources to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I thought if we look that way, rather than accuse them of or take the attitude, hey, you aren't delivering on this, we're not getting this. Well, I'd like to be constructive, and then see again, let's see where they're at. Let's look at this. Let's start looking at point by point this manifesto.
Yeah,
and then,
I agree. Free labor. We want to fund you with free labor to help develop this area of the business for you.
Yeah,
We'll take governance from you. We'll field the questions. We'll see what people want. We'll do the reunions, and we just want to make sure that you guys are checking off the box with us as we go along, and make sure that you're creating redundancies either. So yeah.
Yeah, because I think the big word is really collaboration. Like we've all got aligned interest in this. It's in everyone's best interest for the MIT boot camps moving forward to be successful.
Yeah.
So I think there's that shared aligned interest there. But I think the one thing that we want to certainly imply and possibly state is that this community is their best bet for seeking new attendees to future boot camps. Is that the best way to get people to go to a boot camp is alumni to strongly recommend to their networks to attend the boot camp.
Yeah.
In the past, they've offered financial incentives to alumni for recommending folks. I'm personally opposed to that, just me as an individual opinion. But I'm more than happy to do it for free as long as I feel like us collectively, our feelings are heard in terms of the future direction of the boot camp network, really. Yeah. So I don't want to get paid for it, but I want our community to be heard with what we want to do moving forward. So I think we've got a fair bit of leverage there that we can use sort of quite carefully and judiciously starting from tomorrow, really.
Yeah, I want a logo jacket. That's what it's all about, logo jacket.
Did everyone get a logo jacket after
That's it, right?
All right, what if we start launching? It's 4:30, and I don't know if everyone has time past 5, but we've got a lot of words to cut through. Why don't we start at the top and see point by point what everyone thinks, given the sort of philosophies, strategies that we just discussed, and see how we can change this document in a way that everyone is happier with it.
Before you guys get going, I have a cutoff at 4:30, unfortunately, just as the conversation starts to get really, really interesting. Yeah. But Rachel, I'll input my feedback. I already took a look at the doc. I think you guys know me well enough that I'm more forward. So I'll put my input in that as I get done with meetings over the night and have it to you guys in the morning. So
thank you, Ben.
I love it. Great work, and looking forward to the next meeting. We'll talk to you guys then. Be great.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay, have a good one.
Okay.
Take care, Ben.
All right, shall we start at the top and see, we can buzz through this and see where we can make some changes, starting with here, manifesto, here we go. Okay, so there's the first couple here. We believe that the MIT Bootcamp alumni share a common language and mission, are a powerful community network. All of these items are quite general, and I don't see any. I like the way they are written. Any comments in that first body of what we believe?
I was wondering, Richard, if
Yes.
since Lucy very kindly kind of rewrote a complete proposal, which is at the bottom.
Oh, I have her copy as well.
Yeah, should we look at that directly? Because I think that apart from a few lines, it's just, it's basically the same. Some parts have been taken out, so maybe we just want to look at the parts that are...
Yeah, I can tell you what I did is that I combined one or two lines, because at the end you had something like, we also believe that. And I thought that maybe it was not necessary, but just it's not very, maybe it's just a detail. And there was as well a sentence on, I think, self-organization that I thought we had somewhere else. So that one I removed it or reclassified. Yeah. So I think I kept most of the lines.
I like the way they're written. Does everyone see a copy of it? And we could look at that chunk there, that first set. Any comments on Lucy's revision?
I just remember that Harriet wanted something to reinforce, the will to develop entrepreneurship, etc. So I just.
Oh yeah, she did put notes.
We want to add something here or not?
Yeah, which one?
Right now.
Which one, Lucy?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember. In one of her comments, she said. Maybe we should add something on entrepreneurship, the fact that we all want to, work around entrepreneurship together, that it can be a long journey. So something general maybe about entrepreneurship. I don't know. Just we can see it after. Maybe okay. We have gone through everything to see where it would fit best, if it's really missing or not.
There's one line that I wanted to bring everyone's attention. The deserve to have a voice in shaping the future of MIT boot camps. Conceptually, I like the idea that we would be included in that conversation. I think myself, if I were to just focus on alumni needs, and that's a lot there. To talk about, and given my own schedule, to try and fit in the things that I'm committed to doing for our group, the alumni conversations and planning for the alumni is a lot for me. I don't know about the rest of you, but if we really want to include that kind of line that says we deserve this voice, do you see anyone in the team presently on the call, do you see yourself having additional time to be brought into conversations if we actually argued for that desire and that need? Do you have the time to actually input on the future of MIT boot camps and their planning?
I guess to speak to that one, Richard, I think that with how big we are, I mean, granted, we've got some mass now with what we're doing, but in terms of the number of active folks, so I think both yes and no. I think we've got the mass. I don't think we've got the active membership yet, but I think I would be perfectly happy if we had, say, 1, 2, or 3 people. That was almost, I hate to get into like subcommittees, but if we had 1, 2, or 3 people that were going to take the lead in providing feedback to MIT of what we're all kind of looking after or what we're looking for, like almost like a survey amongst the alumni of what we would like to see with boot camps moving forward. And we're able to just have our input in aggregate and then combined, curated feedback, I guess. I'd be perfectly happy with that, to be honest with you.
Anyone else?
Sorry. I would say I would like to offer feedback to the boot camp folks, but not to say that we almost like demand to give feedback or we have the right to give feedback.
Yeah.
But if they, if they would like feedback, we will help them with that. I would like to make it an offer more than a kind of a demand.
I agree.
Agreed.
Me
How do
too.
we
So
word that so it's more of an offer rather than a demand for shaping the future of MIT boot camps?
yes, because deserve sounds very entitled. So maybe we could say we're keen, or we're available, or we'd like to explore. Yeah, deserve probably is a bit is a bit entitled.
No, I also bear in mind as we go forward in some of these requests that we have that, again, they have a limited amount of people on their team. On our side, the alumni grows and grows. So there are more and more people that we're going to have to attend to. And so there's that. Secondly, we're all providing our time on a volunteer basis, and all these people are paid. And from what I understand, they have limited time, and if they have passion for what they're doing, they're probably putting in weekends, late evenings. But that comes at some point. There's a limit to that, and so we should bear that in mind. That we're talking to people who have probably a limited time being on salary to do some of the things that we may want to demand as a need of ours. So I do agree. If we can rewrite that in a way as appears more as an offer, I think that might be good. Any suggestions?
For me, it's not like they are going to consult us every time they're doing a boot camp. It's more like we're like having some opinions, gathering opinions from the bootcamp community, and possibly even helping them. I don't know why they would like refute this kind of thing. It would even help them to understand what the alumni is thinking of the bootcamp and how was their impressions of the bootcamp itself. And I think we just tell them, okay, we had these and these and these opinions, and that may help you to shape the next bootcamp or not. It's your decision.
Yes, and
yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to say quickly, I think they also sometimes they actually look for feedback. So at one time when they were trying to prototype a new platform that would be something more than just the current website, something more interactive, they, to my knowledge, they had asked a few of the past alumni to sort of test and iterate with them. So I think there were just 3 or 4 people, or even 2 or 3. And if we were able to, when they have such a sort of initiative to maybe rally the whole community and help drive, maybe it could be a thought, and maybe someone is passionate about one thing and could lead that from within our circles and networks. Just a thought, because I think they actually need to be doing PMR as well, and we could be a help in that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what if we said something like, we would like to offer our feedback in any bootcamp planning? I think there's a better way to say that. Anyone else?
I like it.
Yeah, I would almost say, we would like to be a resource for bootcamp. We would like for the alumni to be a resource for current and future boot camps. And I think they do that anyway, right? So all the coaches are past boot camp members. All the folks working on the online boot camp are past boot camp members. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if we just offer them, we're creating this thing, but we're a resource for them that they can draw from.
I like that.
Yeah.
Maybe to stay consistent in terms of wording with the other line, something like we believe that the alumni can offer to be a resource, or can offer feedback, etc., as you were just saying.
Yeah, I think their greatest concern after reading these sometimes is that it may seem that we're actually demanding them some things that maybe they couldn't do. And I think our actual idea is to offer ourselves as resources for them. And by the manifesto, they may think the other way. That's
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, just to that, what you just said, Israel, I latch back onto what Richard said earlier, also to be careful, because we can't just be offering ourselves in the sense that we're doing voluntary. And from my experience, a few people who have offered a lot then don't get any sort of, I'm not saying you want to be rewarded, but there has to be some give and take, and that needs to be defined as well. So we're not just there to be, interrogated or used when useful. So how do we build a collaborative relationship with them where we can offer resources and then be empowered also by the connection? So I guess that's what my question mark is, and I don't really have an answer yet, but not just offering. And I also understand, Lucy and Israel, like you're from Brisbane 2017, so you've got a more recent experience, and perhaps you're less cynical than maybe some of us oldies have become over time. Of sometimes just there's been a lot of sort of waiting, because a few times they've said we're getting things ready for you, but we don't really have the news, so we've been waiting. And that's also why we decided to just get shit done and start doing stuff by ourselves. So I think what would be really helpful would if we were able to implement a more transparent conversation with them as well, because I think that for tactical reasons they withhold information, and that makes it very difficult to collaborate effectively. Because at the time I was trying to prototype a platform for the alumni community, at some point I got feedback that they were doing it, but I wasn't sure what they were doing exactly. Was it alumni centric? No, in the end it was bootcamp centric, and nothing was released because it didn't really work out. So just having very piecemeal information to go by, it makes it difficult, because then you might be wasting effort, or you might be doing something really irrelevant. So I think it would be very good if we were able to open up a space for more transparent discussion with them. And I don't know whether that's possible, but that's one of my hopes, is that we could speak things as they are and be more honest with one another.
Yeah, I think it is possible. I want to jump in here. I think it is possible to develop a more transparent relationship with them. And again, when I'm there with them in person, I get that sense that when they could put their monitors down, and it's at the end of the day, we maybe order pizza. I feel they're very interested in being able to engage the alumni, and they ask me. And this is a couple of weeks ago, just sitting down with them and saying, what did you like about this, and how can we get this to happen? And I think they're very interested. So if we approach them in the right way, in a collaborative manner, I think we can get the room to do more and more what we'd like to do in the alumni space. But to move forward, and maybe we can sort of address each of these issues that Rachel is referring to broadly in each of these lines that we're going to attack. But I have a wording based on Dan's suggestion on this line. What do you think of this? We would like to be a resource they can draw from in planning future boot camps. So that's kind of open. I liked what Dan suggested. We're a resource, and hey, we can also we could be busy and not be available, but at least we're just saying we'd like some. We're not demanding input. We're available for input, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sure, because I think this is also connected with Bill's book. Bill's always say that whenever you want to take some business decision, your customer, your persona should be sitting in the table with you. So basically, this is what we are offering. We're offering that we as a persona representative. We sit in the table where they want to decide. Will future Tommaso will like it or not? Or will the future Richard will like it or not? This is our offering. From a business perspective, it is very valuable. And in order to answer to Rachel's point, how we should benefit from this. I feel that first of all, we should get, at least I don't know, some spreading of our community. I mean, also within the bootcamp, because I mean, in the bootcamp there is always some kind of like, some talk. Like, I mean, for example, in Brisbane when I went, they also invite 3 former boot campers from the previous year to share some ideas. And I mean, actually, that particular session, it wasn't very useful. And if both because it wasn't placed in the right time frame, because all the people were busy with the last presentation, so nobody cared too much about it. But I mean, actually, it would be nice to dedicate some, I don't know, 50 minutes to a video that we can have, or to some, go through the community, so everybody, when they are there, they're already registered into something. I mean, this kind of really like open the doors for us, instead of, invite everybody on Facebook 3-4 weeks after. I mean, do it right on the spot. I mean, during the last day or after the last selfie, everybody got an invitation. Something very like to connect the bootcamp with the reality with the virtuality. This is my suggestion.
I think that is what Rachel said regarding our communication with the MIT Bootcamp organization should be actually very clear as well on the manifesto, because from what Andrew said from Andrew's attitude regarding the document, it seems to me that they're kind of unaware of exactly what we're doing, and there isn't much this relationship, this open channel for conversation. Not saying that is their fault or our fault, but I think this is one first milestone we should go for, because with that we could tell them, okay, we have these and that demands. Is this feasible for you? And what is feasible to you? What is of value for the organization? What is it that you don't really mind that much? So we should just do it ourselves and see if we have some kind of compensation besides the MIT organization, and what may be good for you, for the organization itself.
So, Israel, are you saying that in the things we want, perhaps we should add something about how we would like to structure communications with them ongoing in order to periodically realign?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, not having a great conversation, it's what I believe harms the most relationships. So, yeah, I think it's very important for this.
I agree.
Maybe we could suggest that we have some kind of alignment meeting, 2 times a year, 4 times a year. We can talk about that frequency. I'd like to, what was it, Tommaso maybe suggested, having some ideas that maybe we can do this, maybe you can do that, and offer our suggestions that might be helpful to the boot camp, and also bridging on what Chris said about their need to increase the numbers at boot camp. They've got that marketing effort to work on, and I was also a little put off with the idea that they would give a financial compensation to something I would otherwise do for free. And so I think they would be quite surprised and probably pleased that we would say, hey, if we could talk about this, you'd have this immediate benefit that if we work together, we would be glad to be able to funnel more people into your pipeline so that you'd have more members for your boot camps. And this is how we would suggest we support you, and it doesn't require money. So let's make a line here to something that we can add and then make sure that we include it. Does everyone like the idea of having some kind of line that says we suggest that we are open to meeting 3 times a year or 4 times a year? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I like the idea of just the sort of periodic scheduled meetings between sort of the governance board and MIT team, taking into account things like we're all time poor. So we try to just find that right mix. I have no idea what the appropriate time frame would be, but I think it's one of those sort of collaborative things. We come up with some sort of scheduled time frame when we're going to get together for sort of two-way feedback, two-way comms. And then there's also, the things that can go stated or unstated is, the likes of yourself and Ben and Daniel as well, where people are able to sort of pop in, see them in person on occasion. There's also value in that, but that's really a separate conversation. That's more sort of like putting an exclamation point on things or clarifying things.
So I like as well the idea of getting aligned with them several times a year. More for the structure of the manifesto. For me, I think that the belief part is really the vision of the association, so meaning the spirit, what we think this association should be. And then we have more concrete actions after in the section that I call it commit, but we can really change that. So what I want to say is that I would keep something general, like Rachel had written, maybe remove the word deserve, but something like we believe that the alumni have a voice or can have a voice for Talala. And then later, where we have more concrete actions in the commit part, we can add what you suggested. So we can offer feedback. I don't remember, Richard, how you what were your exact words, but we can offer feedback for future boot camps. And then we commit to have frequent meetings, so probably giving already a frequency with the MIT organization to get aligned. So it's more in terms of structure of the manifesto. I would see it like that. To keep something general, where we have the vision and after the concrete actions.
Well, it sounds like we have a sort of a consensus on that one line about being a resource. And again, I'll repeat that line, and it's largely bridging on Dan's recommendation of the wording. We would like to be a resource they can draw from in planning future boot camps. Does everyone like that? Is that general, puts us out there to be someone that they could tap?
Yes.
Is that good? Okay. And then I made a notation, which I'll also add in the brief after our meeting, about an offer to meet several certain amount of times a year to be determined, and keep that open. That maybe is something that we could discuss tomorrow on the call. Okay, moving forward in the We Want section, does everyone have a view of Lucy's suggested wordings after I think she coalesced some of the written recommendations from the past couple of days? Let's take a look at that and see if we can make any changes and sign off on it.
I'm just wondering on We Want, would it be helpful for me to screen share here so that we all look at it? Maybe, okay. So We Want, I'm just rereading it now. I'm wondering, when we say we want spaces and resources to prototype solutions, so does that sound like it's directed at them? Because at the time of writing, it was meant to also mean, that we might be raising our own resources or raising funds. So if we put it in the manifesto like this, does it come across as like, we want you to give us money so we can do stuff?
I'd like to remove that. That is something definitely I had an issue with. We should reword that so that we're not asking for resources. Again, we're volunteers, and if we choose to put extra time in,
right,
that we should offer that we're going to do something in this particular area.
Yeah, I'd almost say there we would say, where it says and resources, we say to gather resources to share with the community. So it's things that we will resources that we will come up with. That we're not asking MIT for that.
Yeah, is it a question of changing it from we want to we will? We will, we are. I don't know, just chucking it out there.
We offer.
We offer would sort of fall under we commit to, though, now that.
Yeah, true.
We aspire to.
Or maybe we could just change that line to we want to find ways to gather resources.
Yeah.
Something like that. So
I
it
mean, I
doesn't
think
sound like pointing at them. Because another issue that will have to be addressed at some point is if we want to be able to create bigger things and more interesting things, at some point we will need to raise funds, and that's a touchy issue with the alumni community, and it's always been difficult to navigate because the message that comes across it in no way must be, we're trying to make money off the community, but we might, to make it sustainable, we might need some form of participation, but that is something to be worked on in the future. But just because we're at the moment we're all giving our time voluntarily, but there's a cost, so it doesn't mean we want to get paid going forward. But if in the same way that if we do hold an alumni reunion, everyone's going to need to pay a deposit to make it happen, right? So in that sort of sense, to make it just make people aware that we need to gather resources, and then we can brainstorm ways collectively as to how we want to do that, and then go with the majority. But the reason this line is there is that there is a cost entailed, and we need to address that. We can't just keep pretending everything can be completely free. I don't know. Does that make sense?
What about this wording? We lead with the need to prototype solutions, and we will prototype solutions and raise the resources to support it amongst the alumni, something along those lines. So our intention is we'd like to prototype solutions, but we will raise those funds within the alumni to support it, because it is real. We have to have funds in order to execute on some of those bigger plans. But I don't think that we have to stay away from any wording that appears to want money from the boot camps, because then we got to come to them with requests for funds.
Right, but at the same time, I think we shouldn't exclude the possibility that they might want to. I'm not saying invest money, but maybe allow us to work with resources. For example, if they're prototyping a digital space, and we could work together with them and then harness the same digital space, that would mean that they're that they're supporting us, not necessarily through giving us money, but offering to host us, for example. So I think we also should not close up the possibility that we could find agreements of that sort of nature. So really, it's about saying we'll need to gather resources to do certain things, and we'd love to see how we could work with each other. Or so I think part of it will have to be totally independent from raised by us or whatever, or created by us or offered by us as alumni. Maybe there are some spaces where going forward, they'll be able to support us or sponsor us. I'm just thinking that. So not just assume that they're never going to move a finger and that we all have to do everything by ourselves. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's just a thought.
What about something like we want, like you were saying, we want ways to facilitate prototype solutions, such as spaces and resources or something like that.
Yeah, it's the challenge is also not to make it too vague so it becomes incomprehensible. Like, what are we actually saying? So we have to be clear and and not be too adamant either.
Well, I like the philosophy of it, Rachel. What about this? If we'd like to make this easy for them to, we want to work together. And so in this particular case where we're proposing that we're going to prototype solutions, things that might cost money, that we would raise, I propose that we indicate that we'll raise the funds within the alumni community, but that wouldn't prevent us in the future to say, hey, we got this idea. It's going to take X, we have Y. We could use Z. And so maybe at the beginning, my suggestion is that we don't scare them about any requirement for funds. We let them know that we're going to be doing this. We'll raise funds within the alumni community. Unless others disagree, I think it'd be fine to say this is how we're going to operate, and we don't imply that we're going to come at you for any request for funds, but that doesn't preclude us from doing it in the future.
Yeah, that sounds.
What do you think? Anyone?
I don't think this "we want" section is directly aimed for them as like, oh, we want for you this, that. I mean, it's we want as a group, from what there is here, like a group with a heart, and yeah, I don't think they will look at it and think, oh, I need to give money to them and spaces. They may think, but if we put it in a nice way, like saying that we're committed to gathering space, we could actually put these on. We're committed to getting the spaces and resources needed to prototype solutions or something like this. It's very close to "we want" as well.
Okay, so how do we word that?
Well, I'm just wondering if Israel says it doesn't come across as saying, give us money, then maybe we could leave it, because if that reads, it's true that the "we want" paragraph begins in a much broader sense. So we're saying like what we're aiming for, because obviously I'm thinking all of this could be written in 1,000 ways, right? So we don't want to get into making it super complicated and trying to, maybe we could also, one thing would be to ask the bootcamp team, like, what is not sitting well with you and why, and maybe look at those parts that are still abrasive to them and work through those. Maybe that would be that. I'm not sure how they intend to structure the meeting tomorrow, but that could be an approach, is opening up to listening to like what is vexing to you about the manifesto, if anything, and what doesn't go down well, and can we look at how we could reword it together? That might be also an option, I think, because here when we said, we want spaces and resources, some of us were thinking this sounds accusatory or demanding, and Israel saying it doesn't it doesn't come across to him as being so maybe it also depends on the reader.
I'm saying this because of the points we make here, like our own communication and networking tool or system to create at least one bespoke annual event. Those are all directed inwards for me, and so
I also read it like this. Yeah, I agree with you as well. When I read it, I really didn't thought it was directed to the MIT organization. For me, it was something general that we want as a group.
I have a suggested wording for that first line, and then maybe we can address some of the other lines that are within this particular section. I propose that with regard to the resources, monitoring, communications, and prototype solutions, we would like to prototype solutions and raise funds within the alumni community to support them. I think it just lets them know that we're going to be proactive. We'd like to prototype ideas, and we're going to go to the alumni for money. And again, if we need their support, we could show like a proof of concept, like a startup. Maybe they have the funds to invest in that prototype that we're looking to bring to life. What do you think of that wording for that particular section? Because I have some issues about some of these other lines?
I'm good with what you suggested, Richard. Are you able?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to jump into some of these other lines. For example, decentralization of ownership. I have a problem with that in that I don't have the time to actually, I don't know about the rest of you. While it sounds like a good idea, if you have the time, great, then I'd like to nominate that person to make sure that you've got time to jump in there and take ownership of some of their activities. So I wondered, is there a reason for that particular line? I don't particularly see why we need to include that. Any thoughts about that, as well as spaces, physical and virtual? I don't, as much as I like to visit them, it's on a friendly basis, and often, frankly, I'm looking for advice and connections of people that I can meet to help me on my startup, and they're very helpful. But I don't have the time to actually sit there and take a space up. So those two lines there are similar in that we're looking to take more ownership, in my view, than we really have time for. Any thoughts?
The possibly replacing decentralization of ownership, could we put in possibly consider democratization of influence? Because what we are looking for is a quick and easy way for our voices to be sort of heard, like curated influence. I don't know, something along those lines. Like with kind of, to me, it ties in with what we talked about earlier with, you know, we do have open channel communication with MIT. We don't want to force them to do anything. We just want to have our voices heard when you know, and them willing to listen. I don't know, something along those lines.
I like that, Chris. How about something about, I guess it's, you're speaking, from what I hear, about having perhaps a forum to have our voices heard. So is there a way
of influence or something like that? Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Let's see, how can we word that? We'd like to have a forum. I'm just thinking out loud. We'd like to have a forum where our thoughts and opinions are heard. Could that be part of that request to meet 2, 3, 4 times a year, where we can align our interests? I mean, I think that's
like a forum to help shape. Like the word that's stuck in my mind is shape. It's sort of like that. It's kind of ambiguous. It's not too aggressive. A forum to help shape the future of the boot camp community. I don't know, something like that maybe.
Okay. Well, that's a possibility. I'd like to see, my strong suggestion is that I'd like to tell them that we'd like to really essentially shape the future of the alumni group, and you guys shape the future of the boot camps, and you have that control, essentially. I don't want to say that in words, but philosophically, it's my feeling that they're given full control of the boot camps, the beginning of the funnel, and then we take care of the alumni group. And if they kind of maybe see that that's how we can work together, we'll shape that future of the alumni group, but we're here offering on various points how we can be a resource to provide feedback, give you ideas on what you could do. We're like a group, like a PMR resource. But my feeling is we should remove any wording that says we need space from you within your boot camp area. We need decentralization of the ownership of the boot camps. You guys do that thing, and we'll do this. That's sort of my philosophical view. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, just to explain, when I put down decentralization of ownership, it wasn't referring to boot camps. It was an attempt to say, like, if a group of alumni have an idea, we want to be able to proceed without waiting for like a seal of approval. That was the idea. So it was actually referring only to alumni initiatives and not to boot camp. So obviously that's not very clear, so it needs to be reworded.
Oh,
I think it was related to your starfish.
I like that.
Right. So yeah, I already read it like that because you had the other sentence.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. It was meaning like we don't to be lean, agile, and experimental, we need to be able to say, oh, I have this idea, I'm going to try it out, and not wait for the whole, bureaucracy system to approve. And then by the time you start experimenting, it's not relevant anymore. So it's just in order to move quickly, to be able to make our own decisions but not about bootcamp, but about the alumni community. That was just that. So.
No, I could see how you intended that, and it makes sense because early on with the experience that you illustrated for us in your path towards this particular alumni group, they had ownership and control of alumni activities, and whatever plans they had either have not come to fruition. Now here we are. Maybe the time is right where this alumni group is again growing in great number, and they might secretly appreciate that maybe this group could do this part while we focus on this part. So maybe we need to either take that line out, or essentially just point out we would like to handle the alumni part. And if alumni is sort of the planning for alumni was part of what you owned before, we don't want ownership on your boot camp planning. We would like to manage the alumni portion.
So could we maybe say we want to own alumni initiatives? That make it more clear.
We do have to clarify, but I guess that to own means to take at the same time. So is there another way to say that?
Okay. Yeah, I get your meaning.
Why don't we rephrase the we want? I mean, as like we want as a group.
Yeah, I have a suggestion here for that, because I actually like Rachel's suggestion that we just approach this meeting tomorrow as a discussion, right? Because we could wordsmith this all night, I think, and I actually have to go pretty soon. But instead of saying we want, say we want to create a community based on the following principles, and then just have bullet points. So one of the principles is it's a group with heart. The other principle is, we're going to be a group to experiment our way forward. When you talk about decentralization of ownership, we can reword that however, but it's not, as others have said, it sounds like when we say we want, we're asking MIT for stuff. And if we just say we're creating a group based on these principles, then these are the things we want in the group. And then I think that takes the kind of the demand side or negativity out of it for the conversation tomorrow.
I agree.
I like that.
Me too.
What if we just wipe that line, decentralization of ownership, out, and some of these other items like spaces, physical and virtual, out, and talk about what those basic bullet points could be, and kind of keep it open.
Yeah, I think that's actually part of the governance, right? Because if that's things we're creating as a community, I mean, right now we're all just pro tem people, right? So eventually there's going to be, full-time officers or whatever, permanent officers that can work through those issues.
I would also suggest removing decisional power.
Okay. Some of them is actually, I'm realizing it's obsolete because we've moved past that already.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think for the conversation tomorrow, I think, Rachel, you're right. If it's just a conversation, it doesn't even need to be going through line by line. It's just saying, okay, we want to have a conversation again. We've been trying to have conversations, but we want to say, here's where we are. They're going to have opinions on this document. We can ask them where they have strong opinions, and then open up the discussion to, saying this is something we're creating on the fly, and it's going to change, right? Mm-hmm. We can pivot.
I like that, and maybe rather than take this apart line by line, maybe we can look at the more outstanding negative or judgmental statements and just make sure that we eliminate that, so that if we could share this with them before the meeting, we can show that we're far more open in showing that we want to be collaborators and not people who are growing in influence and wanting to demand things from them.
Yeah, I think Lucy's rewriting has basically taken out all the accusatory types of statements we've ever made in the past. So this part we commit to, it's what we're it's what we're saying we're going to do, right? So develop the community, develop an online working system, self-organize, serve individuals and community interests, maintain the goodwill over time, develop better synergies. I added in red the communications alignment, which we could maybe elaborate on more, and get more information. All of this, I think, iterate and improve altogether is a lovely way to finish as well. So I think that part that we had in the beginning, that was negative, I'd say from my first reading of what Lucy wrote, and especially having taken out decentralization, decisional power, and all that, I think there's basically no negative left for me as I see it now. What do you think? It looks quite positive overall.
What if we move to that one line in the commit to here? Could we remove this for which there is no there is currently no dynamic or ad hoc strong management structure? Could we eliminate that and say it differently? Develop the MIT Bootcamp alumni community. Could that be enough right there by eliminating that? Develop it.
Or make it positive and just rewrite that same phrase positively and create a dynamic and ad hoc strong management structure.
Yes, well, that's more positive. I like that.
Like I'll rewrite that without you having to dwell on that. What else? And what do we need for tomorrow? So first of all, I wanted to ask quickly, Tommaso and Chris, do you think is it sufficient for the two of you to be on the call without all of us traipsing in? And I'm leaving it up to you to decide, like, who would you like to be on this call?
What do you reckon, Tommaso?
So yeah, tomorrow, I think that I will be pretty available, even if I will have a call with our group with startup YC. I think in the afternoon, but I think those two, they're not together. So I would be able to be there. So I don't know about Chris.
Sorry, you'll be able or not able?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm definitely able as well. I guess my thoughts in terms of anybody else in the governance team being there, I sort of think the more the merrier. Gives us a bit more mass. But what I would be suggesting is that maybe we let sort of Tommaso take the lead, since he is the leader of our governance board. But we use the chat function, the private chat function, to provide sort of support and sort of indications of things to sort of maybe to emphasize. So it's sort of like more people we have, the more indications we have of how we think things are going. I would just suggest that we use the private chat function as much as we can to help each other out, I reckon.
I like that idea.
Be really careful with that, because sometimes you get diplomatic incidents. You think you're writing to one person and it goes out to everyone.
Yes. I was practicing a bit with Ben, because Ben's from my cohort 5, and we were chatting behind the scenes, so I didn't mess that up. So I'm hopeful I wouldn't be able to mess it up tomorrow. But no, totally agree. You got to be super duper careful with that.
I like that idea, and it's also good to provide each other backup and fill on things that either we may forget, we can augment, and certainly as a group, we're developing ideas, and we can we'll have more heads to sort of debrief with afterwards to see how we can move forward better, and so we'll have more opinions to share as well.
True.
Rachel, would you want to be on the call as well? Because I would like to be.
I'll make the time to be there. My wish is to speak as little as possible. I want to be there to support, but I don't want to be sort of like a flag bearer, and I certainly don't want to antagonize anyone from the bootcamp group. And to avoid all possibility of that, I'd prefer to just be basically quiet unless needed. But yes, I have put it into my diary, so I will make the time for it.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the we commit to section? I'm scanning it right now. Question about the self-organize and drive our own initiatives while it cannot be more integrated into the bootcamp organization. Could we rewrite that in a more positive tone?
Oh, actually, I'm not quite sure. What did you mean, Lucy, by that?
I think I started from one of your sentences. So while it was more for the moment, because right now they don't have time, dedicated to us, etc. It was more to say it's right now, and maybe later it will be more integrated. I don't remember from which sentence I started. I need to go back to your.
Oh, so you mean until self-organize and drive our own initiatives until they can be more integrated?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Would that sound better, Richard?
I think that would sound better, because we can't assume that they're not trying to integrate our needs into their organization.
Okay. Until they can be. Right.
Okay. I have another, any others? I have another comment as well. Let's see, that was, next comment. Maintain the community goodwill over time. Maintain, maybe we could say maintain community goodwill over time without the, and give back to all the alumni. I'm not sure if maybe that could be clarified. I'm not sure about what that means, give back to all of the, I guess I know the intention, but I'm wondering if that could be reworded. The one part that I do have a problem with is most of whom have struggled and stretched enormously to attend the boot camp. I think we all know people who have definitely had a struggle getting there. I don't know if there's a reason to point that out in this document. Having looked back at some of the initial marketing material that the boot camp puts out, when if you look at like page 1 or 2 of their boot camp web pages, it points out about that they're very selective, and please apply. Don't worry about the financing, just apply. And underneath those details, they do mention that they give out some scholarships, but it points out that don't wait till you get accepted to figure out how to pay for this. In other words, they say your ability to make this happen is part of your proof and journey as an entrepreneur to make it happen. So I don't know what we're trying to gain by putting that in there. I think people did struggle. Some people had to do several fundraising campaigns or whatever. Anyway, I see no reason for that particular line. Anyone? I don't know that they can do anything about that, except to say what they did say, as I've illustrated from their initial marketing campaign, or in their page 1. You've got to put this together.
But I think this phrase, Richard, came from the awareness that within the community, of course, it was a commitment on the part of everyone who had to scrape together the money to attend. But that said, there are some people from countries who have had it, who had to sacrifice more than we can, I think, imagine to attend boot camp. And I'm thinking that those people may have just had this 1-week rocket ride without subsequent benefits, because there is no ongoing structure for them afterwards. And when we wrote this line, we were thinking particularly about, it was just a special thought for those who did really, really stretch thin, and who made financial decisions that probably changed their future to be able to come there. And it's certainly not the majority of people, but there are those, even if it's just a handful, I think honoring the sacrifice that they made to attend boot camp by working together to create something for their future, even if only in terms of networking. I think that is just an acknowledgement of that. And I think somewhere within me, I think it's right to actually bring it up, because it's something we might tend to forget, because I'm very privileged. I feel I'm very privileged, and I tend to forget that this is very selective. And even though it's very selective, some people made it like really by scraping everything they could. And I'm wondering, like where are they now? And I just know of one or two of them who were having, just they've gone back to their daily struggle, and this is like just a very distant dream for them.
I couldn't agree more. I remember running into a couple of campaigns where a couple of folks from the developing world, the massive efforts they went to raise funds to be able to attend. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Okay, well, those are good points. Are we happy with the way that is then laid out? I guess most of some who've struggled. Okay.
I'm guessing part of this thought was truncated because it was part of this other phrase that we want to be able to become wholehearted advocates, because if we know that boot camp is a wonderful 1-week rocket ride, how can we advocate this for other people who are going to stretch really thin, and then there's nothing afterwards? So that's why there was this thing about it being a lifelong and not just a 1-week rocket ride. And I think that's probably, could that be like the missing element to actually make sense of that other phrase?
I like what you've said, and now I get your meaning, and it makes a lot of sense. If we could perhaps reword it, or at least maybe put those two phrases together.
Okay, I'll just
like to really make sort of expand on that investment, even for the people who really worked really hard to come out there, to make better sense of it over time. I see the point. I'm not sure how to word it, but it makes sense.
I like your word there, investment, Richard. If we say to kind of extend the investment people have made into boot camp, into the post boot camp community or something like that. It's a way for everyone, as Rachel said, everyone struggled. Not everyone struggled as much, but for those of us that made it through and that are successful, kind of renewing that investment into the community.
I like that.
I'm just putting in notes, and then we gotta clean it up later.
Yeah, because I think when I came in, I expected there to be a relationship with MIT, which I continue to have. I mean, I am still involved in this stuff. So it's worked out for me. But, even if I hadn't been doing that, I expected there to be an alumni association, and the $6,000 I paid was, that was part of that, is to become part of that community. So.
Yeah, precisely. I think that's what we're hinting at.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I like that. No, one thing that sometimes gets missing is that aside from the struggle for a lot of people to make this happen financially, some of us didn't have to have as much a struggle. We still have to prioritize our expenditures. Maybe there are other things we'd have to think about spending $6K on. And making sense of it, but there's also the investment of our family members who bid us good luck when we go off on these programs, and we have to make sense of it to them and get their buy-in, so that everything's working back at home, so that we can focus on things like this. So, there's a lot of investment on many levels besides financial. So I like this line; it makes a lot of sense. I'm making notes, but Rachel, since you're making fantastic, real-time adjustments to the document as we go along, I would love to touch base with you later, make sure that we have the right changes. Let's go to the last section and see any other thoughts lower here, last few lines. And I guess we're also, again, looking at any strong negatives that look for demands or any judgments that we want to pull out, and then still keep it very general, and then go over what we'd like to do and how do we want to collaborate with the boot camp group tomorrow over the call. So far, I like the last few lines. Anyone else? Do you see any issues?
Nothing is popping out to me.
That seems pretty positive on the whole. So, well, one of the phrases that had been previously used to point finger, which was like exploit. It was something to do. The thought was alumni being exploited to recruit, mentor, speak, research, etc. Has become positive. It's been turned on the positive side, so I think that's good. So I'm guessing, people who have been involved with the bootcamp team beyond bootcamp to support and help on various tasks. I've spoken to a few who were dejected and disappointed and felt that they'd been used and discarded. But then I'm thinking there's so many other alumni still very willingly, offering their services. So I'm guessing it's a bit subjective, and maybe different people have different experiences. So some people were disappointed. Some people have felt that they've gotten the reward they feel they would like to have. So I just think this is very subjective. But I think that it would be good that there be some sort of acknowledgement for alumni who are contributing to the community. And I'm not really seeing that happening at the moment. So it seems to be either haphazard or on a sort of favorite-based sort of method. I don't know, because just from my very personal experience, once when I offered to mentor, I'm guessing they must have selection criteria for mentors, and that's one example of when myself and a few others who'd also attended teacher boot camp said, we'd love to mentor at the next boot camp, so please consider us. And we were asked to wait because they were setting up a system to decide who would be mentor and who wouldn't, because obviously they probably had more offers than spaces. And then that's just something that we never heard back about again. So it's one of those things that just kind of were not really directly answered. And that's what I mean when I say transparency. So it would have been lovely to just, know from them. We have a scoring system, or we have a list of criteria, and, that's how we're going to be deciding. And Andrew had actually promised that he would share that with us, but he never did. So it's fine. It's fine because the decision is ultimately theirs. But that's where I see alumni goodwill being slightly damaged. So you have to be very resilient and very hard-headed to keep at it, because some people I know have just said, oh, to hell with that, and I'm going to move on and do other things. So I'm just, that's just a thought. I think that recruiting, mentorship, speaking should carry inherent or apparent acknowledgement in some form. But, as long as they are finding ways to make it work, I suppose there is something in their system which is successful. But that again, it leads us back to the thoughts I had on transparency. But I'm also thinking sometimes maybe they cannot be totally transparent because they need to be strategic and they can't reveal everything they do. So it's a question of hitting a right balance so that we feel that we're connected and not just being called in when needed and then stonewalled when there's nothing that we can give that's useful to them.
I'd like to offer a perspective on that. I, having gone to 2 boot camps, 2 and 4, where I met people who that I'd run into at lunch or dinner, and I would find that they're from the first boot camp or the 3rd boot camp, and I gathered there are more and more people coming who weren't invited necessarily, and by formal invitation. And as I got to know some of the boot camp organizers, I would ask, hey, can I come to this next boot camp? You know, I think I might have asked from 2 to, oh, can I come to the 3rd? And the response I got was, hey, you know, we'd love to have you, but we're getting people showing up uninvited, and it's cutting into the services we can provide, especially at dinner time or lunch, to the people who've paid to be there. And so I was told once that they have to look at how to control that. That was a response between Camp 1 and 2. So ultimately, or rather, I'm sorry, between 2 and 3. Ultimately, since I missed the experience, I applied for number 4, where I met Rachel and some other people I've come to know. So that I think is a problem for them. You know, people want to reconnect with the boot camp experience, and they miss it, so they want to be there. I certainly would like to. Being 3.5 hours away, I could certainly go and do it. But out of respect for that problem, I stayed away, knowing that that's something that they're having trouble controlling. So whether it's a lack of transparency or I don't know if they know how to manage that properly.
I think it's a lack of clarity, because had it been clear, you would know very well whether you should be there or not. So it was sort of left open because it was good to have, you know, the resources and be able to put together a panel last minute of alumni because they happen to be there. So it's just this kind of ambiguity, which I am questioning, because I think it can work at a small scale, but as the, you know, boot camp is getting larger and larger, then it needs to it probably needs a little bit of structure. And I'm not saying that, you know, they have no obligation to share with me how they're going to choose their mentors. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that if you at some point tell the alumni there's going to be a system for choosing mentors, then, you know, the way I work, I would expect to follow up on that. And there are many things I've seen from boot camp that are put out there to get answers from alumni, and then there's no follow up. So I find that a little bit. I find that a little bit damaging, and that might have just created some of the issues I have with boot camp team, which is about not getting back to people about things that have been raised, and especially when you've been told to wait for an answer. That's maybe just operational.
So one thing I can add to this, just a little bit from the time I had with Andrew last week or week and a half ago or whenever. I mean, he pretty much is boot camp. So when we're saying, you know, when we have any problems with boot camp, it's basically mostly with Andrew, because you know, you look at our dean, he's not involved in the day-to-day operations. He's involved in the like video of boot camps and things, but he's not doing the day-to-day work. You know, Bill, all that, he's not involved at all, right? Other than he just shows up every once in a while to lecture, to be on the videos. So I think we need to be very careful, because we think it's this big thing, right? There's so many people that put the boot camp together, and I think most of it is really Andrew. And in terms of looking, because he was class 1, right? So he was a boot camper, so he's also an alumni. You know, from my conversation with him, he's actually getting burnt out on it from his standpoint, even though he's working for MIT and he's getting paid. You know, he's having to organize all these boot camps all over the world. He's the one that's responsible for making sure they're fully booked out, right? That there's enough students in each of them. He's the one that's, you know, pretty much involved in selecting the mentors and the coaches and everything else throughout, and the guest speakers. So just to be, I mean, you know, he does fall short in a lot of places, but just to be careful when we're saying these things. When we say we'd like boot camp to do something, a lot of that is directed directly at Andrew. Just to be kind of careful of that, I think.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
It is an awful lot of work to do for largely one person. I'd go so far as to say, like, simply overwhelming. And I think that's part of the problem. So I think that's really helpful, Daniel, in informing how we approach this. I know Rachel and I spoke offline about how, at least I felt that, you know, we want to be fairly aggressive with how we've approached it to date, but we need to start changing the tone, but also mindful of where Andrew sits in this, and that, you know, we're not doing this to attack him or hurt him. I mean, if anything, maybe it's further informs the need for us to show that this is a support network to help Andrew be able to do his job better, as well as us achieve what it is we specifically want to achieve. You know, because there's going to be aligned interests in there to where we can help Andrew achieve what he needs to achieve. But you know, there's a couple of things that we want to do a bit separately, you know, like with what Richard was talking about on strictly the alumni side. But maybe we've got to take a tone of tomorrow. A big question is, how can we help Andrew do his job better? And maybe we get a more receptive approach.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think Andrew has any problem with what we're doing at all. You know, I think if we present this as, okay, we started out with a certain kind of, you know, manifesto, and that, you know, now we're really getting into kind of the governance of this issue, and we're changing how, in a sense, we're thinking about this, and we want to be a support to them. We still want to have our own alumni association, right? So that's not really a question. We are going to do this with or without them, but we would like to do it with their support, and we'd like to be able to have this help them, you know, help Andrew and help everyone at boot camp to in any way that we can, basically. So
I'd like to echo those feelings. I think Dan put it very well. It's been my feeling as I do run into Andrew, and I do, that he's got a lot of things going on to make all this happen. And he's been there from the beginning. And so if we take this attitude where we'd like to support him in what he's doing, and we're not trying to take anything away from his domain, which he feels very close to. We don't know the enormity of how you know, much time he puts into this. He probably puts in weekends and evenings, off time. He seems to strike me like any one of us who are passionate about what we're doing. We're going to put in time beyond what we're getting paid for. And so he's likely the same kind of person. And but in the end, I know that when at the end of the day, when I drop in on him, or I've made a request online, he's willing to find the time to either chat with me within a half hour of dropping in on them, or in less than 24 hours, I hear from him via email about talk to this person, go to this resource. And so on top of all of what he's doing to put all these pieces together in these boot camps, to actually see what he does to even spend time online on Facebook to put in those little snippets that he does here and there, I find that kind of amazing. But it's not enough for all of us, and it's certainly not going to be enough for this growing alumni group with each boot camp that happens. So I'd like to close. If everyone needs to be somewhere else at this point in time, it's almost 1:45 the hour. If anyone has, maybe we can each have a closing remark. I'd like to say that if we have this, when we do talk to the team tomorrow, if we have an approach where we'd like to offer our help and be a resource to them that they can rely on, we would like to take this alumni effort forward. We're going to do it, but we do it in a spirit of helping you do what you're doing, because ultimately, if they do what they do better and not worry about this big growing chunk, they could probably fill that pipeline that much better and focus more. And maybe he can get more sleep, or I mean, the guy also, his family's in another state, you know. And so if you add that into the mix, I think he's doing a pretty good job despite all the challenges. So I'd like to say this has been a very productive call. I'm glad that we're able to reword some of at least the negativity out of it, and some of the stronger language. There was a reason for it. But now if we have this presentation tomorrow, that we're here to work collaboratively. We don't want to take anything from this area. We want to take this part and that's growing and help you manage this by taking this forward. And hopefully making your life, essentially making your job easier.
I totally second that, Richard. Thank you. It's perfectly worded, and I think that's the spirit of how we want to move forward.
Yeah, my closing remark would be to Rachel. I'd like to say thanks for putting together the manifesto. You've you've been doing this for more than, what, 2 years, trying to put this together, maybe even more than that. I'm not sure when you started. It's been a longer journey for you than it has been for us, and I appreciate your willingness to kind of take feedback, and to, take all your frustrations as we try to switch this around and move forward in a way that's positive but still action-oriented. So thanks for putting this all together, and thanks for being open for all of our feedback.
Thank you, Daniel.
Agreed with all previous. I'm super excited about tomorrow's meeting. I know it's going to be awesome.
Lucy or Tommaso?
Yeah. To me, I also, I think tonight it was useful because, last time we were super excited about this reaction, and now we have time to think about the best strategy, which is great. And I feel that, always having like this kind of gesture is better than punching somebody in the face. And I think, love could be more effective. And I personally think it is unbelievable. This is something that I noticed for my startup, where your customer or your the people who work with you, they start to take the idea you had and start to interpret it and to grow. This is amazing. It's like you have a child, and this child starts to go by himself. So I think that Andrew now is facing this period. So he has to give to us. The child he has created, and so we will take care of some part of it. So I think it's going to be a great collaboration. Everybody here wants to collaborate. Because we don't have time to fight, basically.
Lucy, do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody as well for the work we have achieved together as a team. I'm sorry to have come a bit late with my comments and changes, but it's true that when I looked at the detailed wording, I was feeling that it was not probably reflecting enough the intentions of the association and the fact that you want to attract people. And even if I agree and understand everything that was written, that's why I proposed to turn it a bit in a more constructive way to really think to the future. I'm happy that we can move forward, and I'm really sure that we can achieve something really nice together with the MIT organization, even if I still believe this association has still the same spirit, and the intentions are not just to have the MIT organization. It's first to build this alumni community and to do things together, and helping the MIT Bootcamp organization is part of it, but it's just one component. Also, I was not aware of your meeting that you have tomorrow, so what would be nice is if one of you can maybe give us a feedback after your meeting on what happened. Would be nice.
Israel, do you have something to say before we close?
Oh yeah, I think that was the beauty. That is the beauty of having this living document. At first, they saw it and they were like, "Oh, there is something hurting this alumni community. Let's talk to them." I think it served very well this purpose, and but we have all the good intentions with them, and I think they also have the good intentions. And going forward, in like pointing these problems out in especially in the document, we can always tell them directly, okay, we're having this problem and that one, and it's nice to reword and rephrase the document so it seems like a more neutral piece of document, and may help us even grow on our relationship with them.
Terrific. Well, before we go and move on, we should take a picture. Who would like to do that? Rachel, do you know, which button should you press?
I have a screen capture button, so I'll do that. You're ready? 3, 2, 1, cheese. Okay, great. Let me just, I'll just check that we were caught, because then it'd be terrible to, oh, no, I didn't get it. So I have to do it again. Sorry. 3, 2, 1, cheese. Okay, let me just do my, okay, we're good. Successful.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
So
Thank you for your participation.
next steps, Richards, are you going to kind of just go over the draft and correct it, and then I'll have a look at it? Is that what you said?
Yes, I'd like to share it with you and make sure that I've got my notes aligned with your edits and that we're on the right page, and have that out this evening.
Super. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, and do we agree that once we agree, you and I, that the edits are correct, do we then share it with the boot camp group afterwards tonight? So they'll see that in the morning.
Yes, because the link is going to stay the same always, and the document's just going to evolve. And we can actually even go back and see the whole history of it, which is fascinating. We could have this living documented over time and see how the first draft was and what it'll be like in 2 years' time.
All right, very good. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good work, everyone.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.